Building a Haven in the Shadows, Our Untold Story. Part 1, A Whisper in the Void. The planet was called Havenwood, though few would have considered it such. It was a scrabble of green and brown clinging to a cold rock, orbiting a sun that seemed determined to forget it existed. Located on the ragged edge of Imperial space, Havenwood was a place where dreams went to die, and where the only industry was scratching a meager existence from the unyielding soil. The original colonists, descendants of Earth's forgotten hopefuls, had long since learned to expect nothing from the galactic empire, and even less from the universe itself. But sometimes, even in the most desolate corners, hope could bloom. Elias Thorne, a man etched with the harsh lines of a life fought against the elements, stood on the crest of a wind-whipped hill, his gaze fixed on the star-dusted canvas of the night sky. Born on Havenwood, Elias had known little beyond its borders. He was a farmer, a mechanic, a hunter, and, lately, reluctantly, a leader. Since the unexpected death of his father, he'd shouldered the responsibility of the colony's fragile well-being. Yet tonight, his thoughts were not on the crops, the livestock, or the dwindling supplies. A garbled transmission, a faint whisper riding the static of interstellar space, had unsettled the colony. It spoke of a great darkness spreading through the galaxy, a purge orchestrated by a faction known as the KRYLL, who had usurped control of the Alien Council. The KRYLL, it seemed, were systematically cleansing the galaxy of species they deemed impure, their technologically advanced fleets crushing any resistance. The message ended with a desperate plea, a coded signal, meant for anyone willing to listen, offering a chance for survival, a sanctuary, a last asylum. Elias? A voice called out, breaking through his reverie. He turned to see Sarah Jenkins, his childhood friend and the colony's most skilled engineer, approaching him. Her face, usually bright and optimistic, was etched with concern. "Anything?" she asked, her voice barely audible above the wind's lament. "Just the same static," Elias replied, his voice heavy. "The signal's gone. Probably just a ghost transmission, something picked up from a dying ship, light years away." Sarah frowned. "The codec was real, Elias. I ran it through every decryption program we have. It was a distress call, a sophisticated one at that." "And what do you propose we do, Sarah? We're farmers, not galactic saviors. The Empire doesn't care. They're too busy squabbling amongst themselves to worry about some squabble on the outer rim." "But if it's true," Sarah insisted, her eyes filled with an unshakable conviction, "if beings are being hunted, we can't just stand by and do nothing. We're human, Elias. We've been through this before. We know what it's like to be persecuted." Elias knew she was right. He'd grown up hearing stories of Earth's dark past, of prejudice and genocide, of the courage of those who had stood against the tides of cruelty. That history was etched into humanity's collective soul, a reminder of the potential for both great evil and extraordinary compassion. "All right," he said, finally, his voice resolute. "Let's call a meeting. We need to decide, as a colony, if we're willing to take this risk." The colonists of Havenwood were a diverse bunch. Generations of intermarriage had blurred the lines of ethnicity, creating a community bound by shared hardship and mutual reliance. They were farmers, miners, mechanics, and doctors, united by their desire for a simple life, far from the reach of galactic politics. The debate was long and fraught with anxiety. Some argued that Havenwood was too vulnerable, too ill-equipped to take on such a monumental task. Others believed that they had a moral obligation to respond to the call for help. Sarah spoke passionately about humanity's shared history of oppression, reminding them of the importance of empathy and solidarity. Elias, while acknowledging the risks, emphasized the potential rewards, the chance to build a truly diverse and tolerant society, a beacon of hope in a galaxy consumed by darkness. In the end, the decision was unanimous. They would answer the call. They would build a sanctuary, a last asylum for those fleeing the Kryll's wrath. Part 2, Whispers in the Dark. The first step was to establish contact, to let the refugees know that Havenwood was ready to offer sanctuary. Sarah, with her technical expertise, worked tirelessly to amplify their faint signal, pushing it through the dense interstellar static. Days turned into weeks, with no response. Doubts began to creep in. Had the message been intercepted? Were the refugees already dead? Then, one night, a response. A brief, coded message, confirming that the signal had been received. The refugees were real, and they were desperate. The message provided a set of coordinates, a rendezvous point in a desolate asteroid field beyond Imperial jurisdiction. A small transport ship, piloted by a lone refugee, would be waiting. Elias chose a small team to accompany him on the mission: Sarah, for her technical skills, Marcus, the colony's most experienced pilot, and Maya, a young doctor with a compassionate heart. They would travel in the Stardust, an antiquated freighter that had seen better days. The journey to the rendezvous point was fraught with danger. They had to navigate treacherous asteroid fields, evade Imperial patrols, and constantly monitor for signs of Kryll activity. The Stardust, a relic of a bygone era, groaned and wheezed with every turn, its engines threatening to give out at any moment. Finally, they reached the designated coordinates. The asteroid field was a chaotic jumble of rock and ice, a graveyard of forgotten dreams. After hours of searching, they found the refugee ship, a battered and scarred vessel barely clinging to life. The pilot was an alien of the Krell species, a tall, slender being with iridescent skin and large, mournful eyes. He introduced himself as Zale. He was weary, his voice raspy from exhaustion, but his eyes held a spark of hope. "You are the Havenwood colony?" he asked, his voice tinged with disbelief. "The ones who answered the call." "We are," Elias replied. "We're here to help." Zale explained that he was a scout, tasked with finding a safe haven for his people, and for others who were fleeing the Kryll. He carried with him a wealth of information about the Kryll's movements, their tactics, and their weaknesses. He also carried a list of vulnerable individuals, scientists, artists, and leaders, who were essential to the survival of their cultures. He needed Havenwood to prepare for an influx of refugees. Food, shelter, medicine, everything would have to be prepared to accommodate the influx. Part 3, Building the Asylum. The colonists of Havenwood dedicated themselves to the task of building the asylum. They worked day and night, transforming their small settlement into a haven for the persecuted. Existing structures were expanded and fortified, and new ones were built. They dug underground bunkers, created hidden storage facilities, and established a network of secret passages. They established hydroponics labs for food and medical supplies. Sarah and her team worked tirelessly to improve Havenwood's defense systems. They scoured the wreckage of crashed ships, salvaged discarded technology, and repurposed old mining equipment. They created a rudimentary early warning system, capable of detecting approaching ships, and established a perimeter of automated defense turrets. But resources were scarce. The colonists had to scavenge, trade, and innovate to meet the needs of the growing refugee population. They bartered with neighboring colonies, offering their skills and knowledge in exchange for food, medicine, and building materials. They learned to recycle everything, turning waste into useful resources. Food was often the biggest worry. The team focused on developing more efficient farming techniques, experimenting with new crops, and introducing alien flora and fauna to Havenwood's ecosystem. They hunted, fished, and gathered wild plants, supplementing their meager rations with whatever they could find. The first refugees began to arrive in small numbers, transported by Zale and other brave pilots who risked their lives to ferry them to safety. They were a diverse group, representing a multitude of species, each with its own unique culture, language, and customs. There were the Krell, with their elegant grace and profound wisdom, the Grockner, a sturdy, resilient race of miners and engineers, the Sylvans, gentle, nature-loving beings with a deep connection to the natural world. There were also the smaller species, the ones targeted first by the Kryll. The Glimmerwings, small, bioluminescent and artistic beings, or the furry, gentle kindled, who had a deep understanding of machinery. Each refugee brought with them their own stories of loss and suffering, their own fears and hopes. But they also brought their skills, their knowledge, and their unique perspectives, enriching the Havenwood community in ways they could not have imagined. Elias and the other colonists welcomed the refugees with open arms. They provided them with food, shelter, and medical care, offering them comfort and reassurance. They learned their languages, respected their customs, and celebrated their traditions. Slowly, the refugees began to heal. They found solace in the safety of Havenwood, and in the companionship of others who had shared their experiences. They began to rebuild their lives, to find purpose and meaning in their new home. Part 4, Shadows of the Kryll. The Havenwood colony thrived, becoming a melting pot of cultures and ideas. But their sanctuary could not remain hidden forever. The Kryll were relentless in their pursuit of the alien species. Their fleets patrolled the outer rim, searching for any sign of resistance. They employed advanced surveillance technology, scanning for hidden settlements and intercepting communication signals. One day, a Kryll patrol ship strayed too close to Havenwood. Its sensors detected anomalous energy readings, triggering an alert. Sarah, monitoring the early warning system, immediately recognized the threat. The Kryll were closing in. "We need to hide the refugees," she said urgently. "Now." Elias rallied the colonists and the refugees. They activated the underground bunkers, concealed the settlements, and disabled all communication devices. They cloaked the Stardust and other ships, making them invisible to Kryll sensors. The Kryll patrol ship descended towards Havenwood. Its scanners swept across the surface of the planet, searching for any sign of life. For hours, the colonists and refugees remained hidden, holding their breath, praying that they would not be discovered. The air grew thick with tension. Then, just as the Kryll ship was about to depart, one of its sensors detected a faint heat signature emanating from an underground bunker. "Intrusion detected," the Kryll captain announced, his voice cold and emotionless. "Deploy boarding party." A squad of Kryll soldiers, clad in black armor and armed with energy weapons, stormed the bunker. They were met with fierce resistance. Elias, leading a group of colonists and refugees, fought bravely to defend their sanctuary. They used makeshift weapons, traps, and their knowledge of the terrain to ambush the Kryll soldiers. Sarah, meanwhile, worked to disrupt the Kryll's communication systems. She hacked into their network, feeding them false information and causing confusion. Despite their efforts, the Kryll soldiers were too strong, their weapons too advanced. One by one, the defenders fell, until only Elias and a handful of others remained. Elias knew that they could not win. But he was determined to buy time, to give the other refugees a chance to escape. He charged towards the Kryll captain, his eyes filled with defiance. "You will not take our sanctuary," he roared. "We will not let you destroy our dream." The Kryll captain raised his weapon and fired. Elias fell to the ground, mortally wounded. But before the Kryll could secure the bunker, Sarah activated a self-destruct sequence. The bunker exploded, burying the Kryll soldiers beneath tons of rubble. The Havenwood colony had survived its first brush with the Kryll, but at a heavy cost. Many lives had been lost, and their sanctuary had been exposed. They knew that the Kryll would be back. They had to find a way to defend their home, to protect the refugees from the darkness that threatened to engulf them. Part 5, The Ancient Alliance. In the aftermath of the attack, Elias' death weighed heavily on the colony. His leadership had been the glue that held them together. His compassion had drawn the refugees to Havenwood. Sarah rose to the occasion, stepping into the leadership void with a quiet strength that surprised even herself. It was Zale who suggested a daring plan. He knew of an ancient, almost mythical alliance among several persecuted species, a pact forged centuries ago to resist tyranny. The alliance had faded into legend, its members scattered across the galaxy, but Zale believed that with the Kryll's rise, it might be possible to rekindle it. There are others, Zale said, his voice filled with newfound hope. Species who have endured the Kryll's cruelty, who share our desire for freedom. If we can find them, if we can convince them to join us, we might stand a chance against the Kryll. The task was daunting, bordering on impossible. The members of the alliance were scattered across the galaxy, their locations shrouded in secrecy. Communication was risky, and the Kryll were constantly monitoring for any sign of resistance. Sarah, Zale, Marcus, and Maya embarked on a perilous journey to find the hidden members of the alliance. They traveled in the Stardust, disguised as a merchant ship, navigating through treacherous space lanes and evading Kryll patrols. Their first stop was the planet of Xylos, home to the enigmatic Sylvans. The Sylvans were a reclusive race, deeply connected to the natural world. They possessed a profound understanding of botany and medicine, and were rumored to have the ability to communicate with plants. They found the Sylvans living in harmony with the ancient, towering forests of Xylos. Convincing them to join the alliance was difficult. Their elder, a being of immense wisdom named Elara, was hesitant to commit her people to war. "We have always sought peace," Elara said, her voice soft and melodic. "We have lived in harmony with the forest for centuries. We do not wish to become entangled in galactic conflicts." Sarah pleaded with Elara, explaining the Kryll's brutality and the threat they posed to all life in the galaxy. She spoke of Havenwood, of the refugees who had found sanctuary there, and of the shared values that united them. Finally, Elara relented. She saw the compassion in Sarah's eyes, the determination in her heart. She agreed to join the alliance, offering the Sylvans knowledge, skills, and unwavering commitment to peace. Their next destination was the planet of Goran, a desolate wasteland scarred by centuries of mining. Goran was home to the Grochner, a hardy and resilient race known for their engineering prowess and their mastery of technology. The Grochner were a proud and independent people, wary of outsiders. They had suffered greatly under the Kryll's rule, their minds exploited and their resources plundered. Their leader, a grizzled veteran named Borak, was skeptical of Sarah's offer. He had seen too many promises broken, too many alliances betrayed. "Why should we trust you?" Borak asked, his voice rough and suspicious. "What do you offer us that the others did not?" Sarah spoke of Havenwood's commitment to equality and mutual respect. She promised that the alliance would be based on shared values, not on domination or exploitation. She offered the Grochner the opportunity to control their destiny, to reclaim their planet, and to build a better future for their children. Borak was moved by Sarah's sincerity. He saw in her a kindred spirit, a leader who was willing to fight for what she believed in. He agreed to join the alliance, offering the Grochner's technological expertise, their industrial might, and their unwavering loyalty. As they traveled, they picked up other species, other survivors of the Kryll reign, each time bolstering their alliance. Part 6, The Infirm Leader. News reached Sarah that an elderly leader of the kindled species, a being of immense wisdom and strategic brilliance named Elder Thistle, was trapped on a KRYLL-occupied planet. Elder Thistle possessed invaluable knowledge of the KRYLL's weaknesses and could prove invaluable to the Alliance. However, he was frail and ill, making a rescue mission incredibly dangerous. Sarah, despite the risks, knew that they had to attempt a rescue. The loss of Elder Thistle would be a devastating blow to the Alliance. She and her team devised a daring plan to infiltrate the planet, extract Elder Thistle, and escape without being detected. The mission required careful planning, precise coordination, and a healthy dose of luck. They disguised the Stardust as a KRYLL supply ship, using stolen codes and forged documents to fool the KRYLL patrols. They landed in a remote area of the planet, avoiding the heavily guarded spaceports. Maya, with her medical skills, stayed behind to prepare for Elder Thistle's arrival. Sarah, Zale, and Marcus, disguised as KRYLL soldiers, ventured into the KRYLL-controlled city. They navigated through the crowded streets, avoiding the watchful eyes of KRYLL security forces. They followed the coordinates provided by a kindled resistance cell, leading them to a hidden underground bunker where Elder Thistle was being held. The bunker was guarded by a squad of KRYLL soldiers. Sarah, Zale, and Marcus engaged in a fierce firefight, using their training and their cunning to overcome the KRYLL. They found Elder Thistle lying on a makeshift bed, his frail body weakened by illness. He was barely conscious, but his eyes lit up with recognition when he saw Zale. "You came," he whispered, his voice weak. "I knew you would." They carefully lifted Elder Thistle onto a stretcher and carried him back to the Stardust. The escape was even more perilous than the infiltration. They had to evade KRYLL patrols, navigate through treacherous terrain, and avoid detection. Just as they were about to reach the Stardust, they were ambushed by a large group of KRYLL soldiers. They were surrounded, outnumbered, and outgunned. Sarah, Zale, and Marcus fought valiantly, protecting Elder Thistle at all costs. They used every weapon at their disposal, every trick they knew, to hold off the KRYLL. But their ammunition was running low, and their strength was failing. They were about to be overwhelmed. Then, suddenly, a group of kindled resistance fighters emerged from the shadows, attacking the KRYLL from behind. The kindled, armed with makeshift weapons and fueled by their determination to save their leader, fought with a ferocity that surprised the KRYLL. The kindled resistance fighters managed to create a diversion, giving Sarah, Zale, and Marcus a chance to escape with Elder Thistle. They reached the Stardust and blasted off into space, leaving the KRYLL-occupied planet behind. Elder Thistle, thanks to Maya's prompt care, was slowly stabilized, though his health remained a concern. Part 7, The Oracle Children. Another desperate plea reached Havenwood, speaking of a group of young oracles from the planet Lyra, beings with extraordinary precognitive abilities and deep spiritual insight. The KRYLL, fearing the oracle's power, sought to eliminate them. But the children were scattered throughout the planet, and a rescue mission was going to be difficult. Sarah, knowing the importance of protecting these gifted young beings, prepared for another covert operation. This time, she decided to split the team, assigning different tasks to maximize efficiency. First, finding them. The location of the children was unknown, but the Lyran resistance had encoded a series of clues into a song, to be broadcast publicly. Sarah needed someone who could interpret the music and find a place to extract the children. Zale found someone who could help. A Glimmerwing musician, who had been separated from his own family, agreed to help Sarah. He explained the music was based on the flight pattern of a group of animals native to Lyra. To find the animal, they had to go there. Once on Lyra, a forest planet dominated by towering trees and lush vegetation, the musician led Sarah, Maya, and a small group of volunteers into the wilderness. Their journey led them to a hidden valley, where they found a secluded community of Lyran refugees protecting the Oracle children. Seeing the compassion in the eyes of the team, the refugees agreed to give Sarah the children. The next task was to extract them through the Imperial lines. With the KRYLL patrolling planet, getting off was too difficult. Marcus volunteered to help, but they lacked the means to get past the orbital blockade. The Glimmerwing musician came up with the solution: they could hide the children in musical instruments, hollow out the inside and fly the instruments past the blockade. As they passed close to the Imperial lines, Marcus and his crew, flying in the stardust, swooped in and grabbed the instruments. They escaped into hyperspace, leaving the KRYLL confused. The oracles, safe on Havenwood, proved to be a source of wisdom and guidance. The children, despite their youth, exhibited a deep understanding of the KRYLL strategies and predicted their future moves. They also foresaw opportunities for the Alliance, guiding their efforts toward success. Part 8, Turning the Tide. With the Alliance growing stronger and their knowledge of the KRYLL increasing, the tide began to turn. The Alliance launched a series of strategic strikes against KRYLL supply lines, disrupting their war efforts. They sabotaged KRYLL infrastructure, crippling their industrial capacity. They rescued enslaved populations, bolstering their ranks with new recruits. Elder Thistle, though still frail, provided invaluable strategic advice, guiding the Alliance's forces. The Oracles, with their precognitive abilities, helped the Alliance anticipate the KRYLL's movements and avoid ambushes. The Havenwood colony became a hub of resistance, a beacon of hope for the oppressed. Refugees flocked to Havenwood, seeking sanctuary and joining the fight against the KRYLL. Sarah, with her leadership skills and her unwavering determination, became a symbol of hope for the galaxy. She inspired others to fight for freedom, to stand up against tyranny, and to believe in the power of unity. The Alliance's victories began to attract the attention of other species, including some within the Galactic Empire who secretly opposed the KRYLL's rule. These dissenters provided the Alliance with valuable intelligence, resources, and support. The turning point came when the Alliance launched a daring attack on the KRYLL's main stronghold, a heavily fortified planet located in the heart of KRYLL territory. The battle was fierce and bloody, with both sides suffering heavy casualties. But the Alliance, fueled by their determination and their unwavering belief in their cause, fought with a ferocity that surprised the KRYLL. Using a combination of conventional tactics and unconventional strategies, the Alliance forces managed to breach the KRYLL's defenses. They stormed the stronghold, engaging in hand-to-hand combat with the KRYLL soldiers. Sarah, leading the charge, confronted the KRYLL leader, a ruthless and tyrannical being known as the Grand Purifier. "Your reign of terror ends here," Sarah said, her voice filled with righteous anger. The Grand Purifier sneered. "You cannot stop me. I am the future of this galaxy." "No," Sarah replied. "You are the past. The future belongs to those who believe in peace, in equality, and in freedom." Sarah and the Grand Purifier engaged in a duel, their weapons clashing in a whirlwind of sparks. Sarah, despite being outmatched in strength and skill, fought with her heart. She used her cunning and her resourcefulness to exploit the Grand Purifier's weaknesses. Finally, with a swift and decisive move, Sarah disarmed the Grand Purifier and struck him down. With the Grand Purifier defeated, the KRYLL forces crumbled. The Alliance forces liberated the planet, freeing the enslaved populations and dismantling the KRYLL's war machine. The victory at the KRYLL stronghold marked a turning point in the war. Other species, emboldened by the Alliance's success, rose up in rebellion against the KRYLL. The Kryl's empire began to collapse, its power base crumbling beneath the weight of its own tyranny. Part 9, A New Dawn. The Kryll were defeated, their reign of terror brought to an end. The galaxy rejoiced, celebrating the victory of freedom over oppression. The Alliance, now a formidable force, set about rebuilding the shattered worlds and establishing a new era of peace and cooperation. Sarah, hailed as a hero, became a leader of the new galactic order. She worked tirelessly to promote equality, justice, and understanding among the different species. The Havenwood colony, once a forgotten border world, became a symbol of hope and resilience. Refugees from all corners of the galaxy flocked to Havenwood, seeking a new life in a place where diversity was celebrated and compassion was valued. The legacy of Elias Thorne lived on, inspiring generations to come. His vision of a truly diverse and tolerant society became a reality. The Galactic Empire, finally freed from its internal conflicts, recognized the Alliance as a legitimate power and agreed to work together to maintain peace and stability in the galaxy. The ancient alliance that had been rekindled by Sarah and her friends became a permanent institution, dedicated to protecting the rights of all species and preventing future acts of tyranny. One day, Sarah stood on the same hill where Elias had once stood, gazing at the star-dusted sky. She smiled, knowing that their dream had come true. Havenwood, the Last Asylum, had become a beacon of light in the darkness, a testament to the power of human compassion and the enduring spirit of hope. The colony continued to grow and thrive, a living embodiment of those first principles it was founded on. The once isolated planet welcomed travelers from across the galaxy, and Havenwood became a neutral space to teach future generations about peace. But Havenwood was not the only lasting product of the war. From the ashes of the old, a new galactic council was formed, one where fairness and equality were not just ideals but guiding principles. Sarah was among the first to serve on this new council, ensuring that the lessons learned would never be forgotten. There were times when she felt the burden of the past acutely, hearing echoes of the Kryll's ideology in the debates of the council, but she never wavered. The memory of Elias, the faces of the refugees, the strength of the Alliance, all these fueled her resolve. The story of Havenwood and the Alliance became a legend, a tale told in schools and passed down through families. It was a reminder that even in the darkest of times, hope could endure, and that even the smallest acts of kindness could change the course of history. It was an enduring testament to the fact that true strength lies not in military might, but in unity, empathy, and the unwavering belief in a better future.